right, so with me today is Austin Surhoff, Fike Swim Ambassador, giving you all a break from my face for a little bit and throwing Austin in here. I'm super excited to have him on, not just because he is a cool guy and talented, famous, and all that, but because he is probably the living, breathing epitome of swim different. And we'll get into what that means in just a second. For those of you who don't know Austin, quick little bio here. He is, just a phenomenal swimmer all around. Pretty much can do anything and everything. His primary background is in IM. He was a NCAA champion, U.S. national champion, and came in fourth at Olympic trials in 2012. So big time pedigree in IM. Austin, welcome.
Thank you, James. Great to be here, man. I'm glad we get to do this, chop it up about how we've been swimming different, man. It's been fun. It's been fun talking to you about that for the past year. I'm ready to break it down for everybody.
Yeah. And so let's jump straight into that. So you got fourth in Olympic trials in the 200 IM, behind a couple of big names, some guy named Michael Phelps. That's pretty good. But not what you wanted. And so you did retire after that, right?
In 2012, I got fourth, and then right. I had another year of college, and then I actually did 3 years as a pro. 2016, I got eighth, and that's when I chose to retire for the first time. Yes.
Okay. So after 2016, you retired, and it was eighth in the 200 IM, right?
Yes. I was eighth in the finals heat.
Okay. And so what was your sentiment then when you left after trials?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because when you're in college, you throw yourself at whatever's going on, what you're supposed to do. We came from the same collegiate program. We always were just like, tell me what to do. I'm going to do it. Like, not really thinking twice. Although I would say as a junior and a senior, when I was really talking to friends, when we'd go home from swim practice about things that we were thinking about it, I definitely grew more of a sense of like, these things work for me, these things don't. When you're a pro, I still had that mentality of like, I'm just going to do whatever I'm asked. I'm going to do the work. The work was good. I got to train with Michael and with Bob Bowman, with a group of people that eventually made the Olympic team. But I just had this sense that like, I didn't know it at the time, but I know it now that I should have been doing something maybe a little different if I was to maximize everything about my potential, right? Like even the best training, and I would argue that group did the best middle distance training in the world, it's not necessarily a one size fits all, and it shouldn't be. I mean, they had this template that worked and it produced Olympians, but I always had this nagging sensation after 2016, like I could have just done things a little different. Now, is it because I DFL'd the final seed Olympic trials and moved down 4 spots from when I was a college kid and put off, post-collegiate life as an actual person for 3 years to go ahead and get eighth? Yeah, I was probably feeling a little bit of regret. But I also realized now that I was also craving a very deep sense of agency. I think some people, especially as they grow into their identities as adults, need agency over what they're doing. And that kind of burned me out. And again, not because of the group itself, not because of the coaching, just because I'm wired in a way of like, I eventually was like, I kind of want to do this, but they want me to do this. I'm going to do this, but this wanting to do this is kind of carving me out from the inside a little bit of like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right.
And so that led to burnout. And I think I needed to stop for a little bit. I needed to miss the sport. That's what a lot of people need to do in any sport. Sometimes when they reach a certain plateau, hit a certain bedrock, with their feelings about it. And when I came back, which I guess is going to lead into what we eventually want to talk about, I threw myself completely at the ethos of like, I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to do what feels right for me. I'm going to do the events that I even want to do, even if they're not the events I might necessarily not be best at. And I've enjoyed it so far, and it's definitely produced results that are, you know, that have been good, you know, in the opinion of other people, because I'm doing things that are cool, and I'm accomplishing things like Olympic trials cuts and new events. But then also I'm just very much enjoying that all of it is mine. You know, like I have total ownership over all of it. And on race day, it all comes down to me.
Right.
And that's a cool thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But and let's talk about your shift, because it's kind of seismic, might be too dramatic, but like you've gone from an IMer 200 and 400 to a sprint freestyler, which I think is everybody's hopes and dreams in life, is being able to do
including
the 50
me.
free.
Including me.
So, I mean, not to joke too much, because that, as we all know, like people just generally as human beings, like we have our comfort zones, and it's very difficult for us to step outside of those comfort zones. When I came back, I never really left the sport, but when I decided, you know what, I'm going to give this one more shot, and I came back right into breaststroke, which is my bread and butter, and it's what I just grew up on. Even though I was really interested, I was like, man, for a breaststroker, I have one heck of 100 fly in me. And so it'd be really cool to do that, because I've got a good dolphin kick. I love that event. I'd love to do that. But no, I said, I've got unfinished business in breaststroke. It's what I know, and that's what I'm going to stick with. Your bread and butter is IM, and not a ton of background in 50 and 100 free. So was it just, I mean, what made you choose those two?
Yeah, it's a good question. So like I said, it was do what I want. And so I really did, and we're talking now 2019. And I guess with hindsight, like the way that you never left the sport, but maybe at times you thought you were done, right?
Right.
Like 16 to 17, I was retired, but like how many sports are there where a 25-year-old retires and they take it seriously? You know, like if I was a baseball player, right? Like would people be like, oh yeah, he's retired, like he'll be back, some team will sign him. I think it was just a much needed break. And I don't think I ever really left either. I just needed to feel like I was done in my mind. So to the 50 and the 100, I have always known that I had speed. You know, I've always been a big kid growing up. You know, I got to 6'4" when I was a sophomore, junior in high school. Wow. I was always very strong. I could tell relative to my peers in the same events. You know, like I would be like top 3, top 5 on the Texas team in, you know, the big compound lifts in the weight room, like the deadlift, like the squat, never the arm stuff. My arms are too long to be good at bench. But I actually made it my goal in high school when I was a 400 IMer, when that was my best event. And coaches were telling me you can make the Olympic team in the 200 back one day. You just have to do X, Y, and Z, which I listened to, and they were great coaches. I was at a very good club team. I actually made it my goal, and I told my club coach this: I'm going to make Texas's 400 free relay while I'm in college. And he was like, all right, awesome. Do it then, man. And when I got to Texas, that first year, it was all 2-4 IM and 2 back. I ended up winning my freshman year in the 200 IM. So we doubled down on that sort of training. But then my sophomore year, Eddie really started to see the strength. And he has told me that he basically trained me like a 400 IMer, but then would taper me closer to a sprinter, because I got my edge even in the 400 IM from my strength. Like I was a guy who could ride easy speed just from being stronger than the guy next to me, and ride it to eventually as a senior at 344 IM. If you look, I was one of the better first 200 splits at that NCs when I did it. but I got onto the 2 and the 400 free relay my sophomore year as at NCAs. And so boom, accomplished that goal. And then the next goal was win a 400 free relay at NCAs. You know, a group of us, myself, Jimmy Fegan, who's arguably Texas's greatest sprinter ever, although there's been quite the renaissance of sprinters since him in recent years. Dax Hill, the 3 of us, and Clay Youngquist, who was also on this eventual NCAA champion relay. We said, we're going to win a 400 free relay. We haven't done this in a while as Texas. And if you look back in historically, before 2012, Texas hadn't won a 400 free relay for a little while.
Right.
We went and we won it in 2012. And I went from being a guy who was a 400 IMer to an NCAA champion on a sprint free relay.
Yeah.
And I would go 50.4 long course basically every single year at the long course meets. So all of that to say, even when I was doing 200, 400 IM training, I was putting out times that were good enough to be a relay freestyle guy, you know, and I made WOGs in the 200 free as a pro in 2013. So I always knew the freestyle was there. I always knew the speed was there. And I really wanted to try out, what can I do if I focus only on speed, only on high end strength, and I cut out the hours and hours and hours of aerobic that theoretically kind of sand down that explosiveness, maybe not to the nub, because I feel like I was very explosive seriously, I was very explosive at my best in college, even when we were doing high end aerobic training, but I just wanted to only focus on the explosiveness. And also it's just really cool. Like, dude, even when I was a 200 IMer and we would always give the sprinters crap for never doing anything in practice, they were badass, man. You know what I mean? Like Jimmy Fegan and Dax Hill. And these days, I guess a better example would be like a Ryan Hoffer at Cal or a Drew Kibler. Those guys are doing, you know, 7 different events at NCAs and doing dozens of swims at every big meet they go to. Like, they're the true warriors on a swim team when you go to the big meet, in my opinion. And I really just wanted to try out being like those guys. So yeah, that's the spiel about why I wanted to be a sprinter.
Okay, so let's cut right to how you're swimming different, because you mentioned like you see what happens when you cut down all that training. And I mean, you've cut down the training about as much as I've ever heard of anyone cutting down training. I thought I cut down my training because I'll have days where I max out at like 500 or 600. But I mean, in the run up to trials, you had multiple days a week where you didn't touch the water. I mean, right? Yeah. And sometimes strategically, sometimes circumstance, just because I was working a full-time job as a coach at the Johns Hopkins University. But yeah, I mean, it was also, I think, to add more credence to your point, if it was a week where I couldn't touch the water, it was more of an attitude of like, oh my God, I'm not doing enough. It was like, okay, just look at the aggregate, look at the wash, a missed practice or two, which is how I used to think. It was like, wait, this practice didn't go this way. This pace workout didn't go this way. Oh my God, what am I going to do at this meet? I'm screwed. And so it was also a mindset of like, let's look at the big picture every single time. Right. Yeah. And I think the holistic aspect of training is maybe the most important, piece of it all. Just taking everything with a grain of salt and looking at the big picture and not losing sight of everything that goes into your training, because it is, I mean, oh my gosh, I was in the same boat. I think every single swimmer I have ever met is in the same boat where they think, oh my gosh, I missed a day of training. I've just tanked my season, you know? And if I could just slap some sense into me of 20 years ago, man, that would have been nice. But okay, so in the things have changed a little bit since trials, I think, with your planning for 2024. But in the run up to trials, what was a week like for you without any circumstances popping up? If you got a week of training in, what did it look like?
Sure, like an ideal week of training, right? So are we talking, just so I can give everybody a better idea, because it did change between like the last chunk of hard in-season training and then tapering for trials?
Yeah, well, just give us both. Yeah.
Sure. So there was a really nice chunk. And also you have to understand, I was also pivoting based on what I had available to me. Like I had to pivot to a lot of different circumstances based on my work, based on the pools that I got to use. But my best chunk of training was between late January and then now I can't remember. I guess the end of April. I guess like the end of April, mid-April. And that's when I had access to our pool where I was coaching at the Johns Hopkins University. And so a training week would be, I would do one workout that was focused specifically on dolphin kicks on power racks and freestyle sprinting on the buckets. And that would just be 45 minutes of a circuit of those two things back and forth, maybe do like 10 dives afterward. Right. So like to give everyone more specificity, like a heavy week, I would do, let's say 3 rounds of a circuit where on the racks, I was going, let's say 3 rounds of 10 dolphin kicks on a minute. And then I'd switch over to the buckets and I would do 3 rounds of a 15-yard sprint freestyle. And then I would switch that back and forth 3 times. And on the freestyle, I always like to start with equipment that would create resistance, that would make me feel sluggish in the water, and then progress to in the middle, feeling like it's basically how I feel in a race. And then at the end, go above how I feel in a race. So to kind of explain that, round 1 would be freestyle sprints with a full destro tower bucket, by the way. Sometimes I would put little weights in my hands and do fists, grab a sock, and then just do that, no breath. And then round 2, I might keep the socks, but then I would throw paddles on. And then round 3, I would do like fins and paddles, and it would be like supercharged compared to how I felt before. I love feeling the full spectrum of having to like super focus to do what you normally do. Like I love resistance training. It's literally that's the church I worship at. Yeah. And then on the dolphin kicks, I would progress from socks and then socks and fins. If I do 4 rounds, it would be maybe 1 round with just my feet and then a round with fins. And again, it's the same progression of like having to overwork all the way down to feeling super, super fast. And that full spectrum, that progress is what I like to feel every single workout. So that's one workout. I'll shorten up the second one.
So was that like a Monday? Was that like a Monday right there?
Let's call it Monday. Yeah. And then Tuesday, which is just the day of the week that I can meet up with my training partner. His name is Tony Colillo. He's a former Villanova swimmer.
Oh, yeah.
Him and I would meet up at the local swim club where I actually grew up swimming at MBAC Meadowbrook. And we would do a long course workout because even though I'm super committed to this path of like less training, focus on explosiveness, breaking things down, you still need to be able to swim long course. Like long course is still swimming.
Right? It's a different animal. Yeah.
And we did the same variation of a set for about 1.5 years. That was either, depending on how we were feeling that day, 12 or 16 50s. Every 4th one was freestyle. And it would be either on one day, it might be descend. And by the way, everything was on like 115 to 130. So max rest. Maybe descend 1 to 4. So maybe like a big descend to where we go like 30 on the first one and then 28, 26, and then all out, trying to get as close to goal second 50 of the 100 time. Some weeks, if I'm feeling it, I would say like, all right, let's try to bunch this up a little more. Maybe start at like a 27 and then go 26, 25, and then all out.
Wow.
It just depended on the week. That one, there was less progression to it. It just depended on where I was at in the season, how Tony and I were feeling that day. Sometimes we would depart from each other on what we were doing, which was nice. Like we never actually like swam next to each other. We would share a lane and just like cheer each other on, and it was awesome. So that workout would come in, I mean, maybe 1,000, 1,500 at most. And then if we were in the heavier part of the season, we would end with a set of vertical flutter kick, which vertical flutter kick is absolutely incredible if you did it the way we were doing it, which was with fins and with socks. And it's the same way. It was a progression of, we would do maybe 30 seconds fins and socks for a round, and then do like 2 to 3 rounds of that, and then a sprint 25 flutter kick with nothing on. And then we would do a round where it was just like just the socks for 20 seconds, and you try to make them, by the way, the fins and the socks, we made them super big kicks. We want to feel all of the muscles that you have to harness to do flutter kick and basically accentuate. Right. I mean, I'm talking out of my depth here, but the neurological connections, I guess, to use your whole leg, to use your lower abs to do a flutter kick. So max resistance, max size, super slow for 30 seconds. Round 2, drop the fins, so socks only. It's a little shorter lever, so it's easier to do. And go, we would call it like 200 pace flutter kick for a couple rounds on 20 seconds, all out flutter kick on a board with no equipment on. And then the last round, we would do maybe like 5 rounds of 10 seconds, all out flutter kick with just our feet. And then into an all out 25 flutter kick with no board. And the all out 25s, or with a board, the all out 25s flutter kick were always no breath too. And the way the rest work for those would always be a minute. So 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off for the flutter kick with the fins and the socks, 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off for the socks where it's a little faster and smaller, and then 10 seconds on, 50 seconds off for the super, super fast flutter kick.
Wow.
Yeah, with just our feet. Yeah. So so that would be an intense day. And then the last day would be the same sort of circuit as Monday. So I would do this, let's call it Thursday or Friday, just depending on when I could get in the water, depending on the coaching schedule. It would be a flip of what I was doing on racks and towers. So it would be all out freestyle sprints on the power racks, and those are 10-yard sprints for those who don't know. Same sort of thing where it was multiple rounds on, I like to give myself a minute when I do power rack stuff. And then on the buckets, instead of doing dolphin kick, it was actually all out flutter kick. I really like doing all out flutter kick on buckets because 15 yards is not particularly short when you have resistance, when you have it's just long enough that you have to be sprinting for about 10 to 15 seconds. And I would try to tailor the resistance I use, the amount of water in the bucket, that I could go a 10 to 15 second all out flutter kick 15-yard sprint, and also be able to do it no breath and do a couple of them on like a minute to 120.
Right.
And then same thing, dives afterward.
Okay. So let's zoom out then. How many swim practices a week was it?
It was 3 at most, but most weeks I would only be able to get in 1 or 2, just depending on my schedule. Like I said, I was giving you guys the ideal one. I would say most weeks it was 2, some weeks it was 1, where I would just get over to Meadowbrook, the long course pool, and swim with Tony, just to make sure that we kept that going, because I really enjoyed swimming with him and I didn't like letting him down, and missing our workouts. But I personally preferred the resistance workouts because I could just feel the results that I was getting from them. I loved the explosiveness that I would get from that stuff.
And how many yards total per week?
I mean, you'd have to count up the 10 and the 15-yard sprints. Yeah, I mean, we could ballpark it 2,000 to 3,000. What do you think? I don't know. I don't know. Man. I wish I could tell you.
I think that's freaking crazy. I mean,
and then I should point out, and I think this is important for the viewers, especially earlier in the season, I was finding ways to get about 45 minutes of aerobic a week outside the pool.
Yeah.
So late summer into early fall of 2020, a group of friends and I would do Murph Mondays, which was like a CrossFit spinoff that we would do in a park that was near us in Baltimore. And that would clock in at about 50 minutes of pretty high end aerobic work and high reps of pull-ups, bodyweight squats, and push-ups. I love doing pickup basketball for aerobic. And now that my wife and I are here in Denver, I've actually joined a pickup basketball team for the first time since before the pandemic. And I get to do, so that's how I'm going to get my weekly aerobic. And I think like we can chuckle because I'm playing a game, but also it is 45 minutes of very high end aerobic work.
The reason I laugh is because this could not be more different than what any of us, you, me, anybody, has ever grown up thinking about swimming and what it takes to be a swimmer. It's just it's night and day. I mean, it's great. I hope that these kinds of things open people's eyes to the possibility of being more well-rounded and not so focused on just yards.
Yeah.
So no, I mean, I think it's great. I wish I could do it. I think it's a step too far for me. I'm not as talented as you are, but I have seen a huge improvement in myself focusing on power, resistance, speed, strength. So I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Okay. So now what did you learn from trial? And we're gonna have a few minutes left. I think this is gonna cut us off soon. So what did you learn from trials this year that's going to change, if anything, how you prep for 2024?
It's going to change a lot of things. I'm not going to throw out the plan. I like the plan that I had together. I like the resistance work that I do. The main thing that I have to change is my consistency. And I think the main way that that's going to come from, interestingly enough, even though I've gotten a lot of pride from being a solo swimmer, is I do want to make my way back into a group once or twice a week, just wherever that might be, whether it's a master's group or a club team around here, whatever I can balance. I have a full-time job now that's not coaching. So it'll just be whatever I can balance with that. But I actually want to feel a little bit more external accountability again. I think I've used the last couple of years of swimming on my own to kind of cleanse out that feeling of like, man, I really wish I had done X, Y, and Z when I was doing, A, B, and C. So I think the next step will be just inserting a little bit of external accountability to make sure that I'm staying on top of my workouts, while balancing a full-time job, while balancing, a normal married life with a wife and a dog. And let's see what else. It's going to be consistency with the aerobic. I lost track of that a little bit, that 45-minute outside the water thing, this spring, because I didn't have pickup basketball and my friends and I weren't doing these outdoor Murph Mondays in the wintertime. So there's that. And then also weight training. I've been thinking about weight training a little bit differently lately too. I've been doing a lot more, I forget what they're called. Someone maybe can watch this, that's watching this can correct me, but holds. So like is eccentric the one where you're at the top of the exercise or you're at like before you push back up?
Oh, and yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I've been doing a lot. I basically mix in eccentric holds into everything that I do now. So if I'm doing a set of pull-ups, if I'm doing body weight, I'll do sets of 10 pull-ups where on numbers 5 and 10, I'll hold at the top for 5 seconds and then slowly let myself down for another 5 seconds.
I do that in my routines. I do slow releases sometimes on lots of things like pull-ups, tricep extensions, and bicep curls. I think there's a lot there that you can do that'll be helpful. I may look at trying to do more of it myself. I think that is an untapped frontier for me personally, and it sounds like for you too.
because from what I've read, it helps with hypertrophy. It helps with muscle size a little bit. And then I guess also theoretically, and again, I'm out of my depth, that increases the potential of strength for the muscles. So starting out the year with very high reps, a lot of eccentric holds, and then making my way towards lower reps and higher weight to develop the strength. And then towards taper time, I've thought about all this. This is kind of the big picture plan for weights. And then towards taper time, think about it. The way that you theoretically develop explosiveness is you think about the speed at which you're moving the weight. So lowering the weight as I'm moving towards a meet, but also thinking about being very explosive with how I move the weight, whether it's a pull up or a deadlift or a dip, just making sure that the rep is fast from A to B. And not necessarily doing the reps over and over again super fast, but when you do a rep, making it super explosive. Thinking about that. And then the last thing, and this, I don't think you and I prepped about this at all, but it actually comes from trials and then my recent experience attempting to get in the ISL, which I can give everybody kind of an inside baseball look at how that process went this summer if you're willing to take a little bit more time. But I'm also going to start training. Sure. I'm also going to mix in some breaststroke into my training. And
there you go.
Yeah. So talking about, I got into sprint free because of things that I always thought were true about me. I was, and I'm not kidding, always either the best, second best, or third best breaststroke kicker anywhere I went. I could take on any breaststroker in breaststroke kick. I always was the lazy guy that would do that instead of flutter kick if coach gave us a choice. And what was always holding me back was body position. I actually had a brief moment in the sun in breaststroke where I was Texas's Big 12 400 medley relay breaststroker my senior year. So I know all that is there. And coming out of trials this summer, you saw my Instagram posts with no breaststroke training for about 5 years. I flat started at 24.9. So yeah, I'm also going to be pivoting into breaststroke. I went at 21.3. I think I sent you this. I went at 21.3 at alumni relays in Austin from a relay start in butterfly. So I don't.
Oh yeah. That was great.
I kind of want to just see what's out there in other strokes too. And then also keeping freestyle, as the main focus, but also leaving room to open up to other events. I'm also like super ADHD. Like, actually, I'm not saying that like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I actually have ADHD and I don't want to stay focused on one thing. I need a lot of variance. I need to mix things up. It's why I was an IMer back in the day. So I want to try some new things, and that's going to be adding a breaststroke slate as well.
Austin, thank you so much for doing this with me. I think these kinds of things, these stories like yours, like mine, I think they're hugely beneficial for folks who want to do things differently, but they don't like have a starting point. They don't have a guide, an inspiration, something to really like push them out there to do it. Mm-hmm. And I hope that, people like you and me can inspire others to make their own journeys into the unknown. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And my parting advice on that note would be start at zero. Push the boundaries of the thing that you are interested in, but scared to start almost to the breaking point. So for me, it was what can I accomplish with the least amount of yards possible, only focusing on power and resistance, and also doing yardage, like the least amount of yards possible included one long course workout per week. But I've learned from that was the very bottom of what I can do. And I'll probably add some things in. It's not how I'm going to be forever. So that would be what I would say is start at zero, find the limits, and then that'll set the bar for you to move forward from.
Well, man, it was good talking to you. We'll be talking again soon, you and I, about Fike Swim stuff. But thank you so much again for joining us. Yep, fikeswim.com. Check it out. He's got a really sweet signature suit. Lots of cool designs, colors in there. Check it out, and we will see you hopefully in season 4 of ISL.
Absolutely. See you, James.
See you, Austin.